3 years of devotion, 7 months pregnant, and replaced in a single afternoon. Most women fear finding lipstick on a collar, but Maximus came home to find her luggage on the driveway and another woman wearing her wedding ring. They thought she was just a penniless orphan they could discard like yesterday's trash. They thought her silence was weakness. But they made a fatal miscalculation. They didn't know that the orphan they kicked out into the freezing rain was the estranged heiress to a global empire. And her 2 billionaire brothers? They just got the phone call that's going to burn the Sterling family legacy to the ground. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it punished. It hammered against the asphalt of the driveway, turning the manicured landscape of the Sterling estate into a grey, weeping blur. Maximus Sterling stepped out of her modest sedan, struggling to open her umbrella. At 7 months pregnant, her centre of gravity was off, and her lower back throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. She had spent the morning at St. Mary's Charity Hospital, not the private clinic her mother-in-law Martha preferred, waiting for a routine checkup. She was tired, her ankles were swollen, and all she wanted was a cup of tea and to curl up in the library. But as she waddled toward the massive oak front doors, she stopped. There were suitcases on the porch, 4 of them. Beat-up, vintage leather suitcases that she recognized instantly. They were the ones she had moved in with 3 years ago, the ones she had bought at a thrift store in Chicago when she was pretending to be a nobody. "What on earth?" she whispered, the cold wind whipping her wet hair across her face. The front door opened before she could reach for her keys. Martha Sterling stood there. The matriarch of the Sterling shipping dynasty was dressed in a sharp, slate-grey Armani suit, her silver hair coiffed into an immovable helmet of authority. She didn't look angry, she looked bored. "Martha." Maximus shielded her eyes from the rain. "Why are my bags outside? Is the fumigator coming early?" Martha didn't step aside to let her in. She simply crossed her arms, a diamond tennis bracelet glittering coldly under the porch lights. "No, Maximus, the fumigator isn't coming. The trash collector is." Maximus blinked, a nervous chuckle escaping her lips. "I don't understand." "It's over," Martha said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "Liam has filed the papers this morning. Incompatibility, irreconcilable differences, whatever the lawyers put on the forms to expedite it." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Divorce? But we just had dinner last night. He kissed my stomach. He said what he had to say to keep you placated until the arrangements were made." A new voice cut in. From the shadows of the grand foyer, Liam Sterling emerged. He looked impeccable, as always, in a navy Brooks Brothers suit, but his eyes, usually warm and crinkling with laughter, were flat. Dead. He wouldn't look at Maximus's face. He stared somewhere past her left ear. "Liam?" Maximus breathed, the umbrella slipping from her hand and clattering down the stone steps. "What is she talking about?" "It's not working, Elle," Liam said, checking his Rolex as if he had a meeting to get to. "It hasn't been working for a long time. You don't fit in this world. You never did." "I don't fit." Maximus placed a protective hand over her baby bump. "I am carrying your son, Liam. I am your wife. Are you sure about that?" The question didn't come from Liam or Martha. It came from behind Liam. A woman stepped forward, linking her arm through his. Jessica Thorne. Maximus felt the bile rise in her throat. Jessica was the daughter of the city's district attorney. She was blonde, tall, viciously sharp, and everything Martha had always wanted for Liam. She was also Liam's ex-fiancée from 5 years ago. "Jessica," Maximus said, her voice trembling, "get your hands off my husband." Jessica laughed, a tinkling, cruel sound. She rested her head on Liam's shoulder. "He's not really yours, is he? You borrowed him, like you borrowed this lifestyle. But the lease is up, honey." "Liam," Maximus pleaded, ignoring the women and focusing on the man she had loved for 3 years. The man who had promised to protect her when she told him she had no family. "Please." "The baby. We can talk about this inside. It's freezing." "You aren't coming inside," Martha snapped it. "I've changed the codes to the gate and the house. Your personal effects are in those bags. I've been generous and included a check for $5,000 in the front pocket of the blue suitcase. That should be enough to get you back to wherever you came from. Idaho? Ohio? I have nowhere to go." Maximus cried out, the rain soaking through her beige maternity coat. "You know I have no parents, no home to return to. You're throwing a pregnant woman onto the street. We're throwing a liar onto the street." Liam finally spoke, his voice hardening. "Jessica told me everything." Maximus froze. "What?" "About your past," Jessica interjected smoothly, stepping onto the porch but staying well under the overhang, safe from the rain. "About how you targeted Liam. A poor orphan waitress stumbling into the path of the heir to sterling shipping. It's a classic gold digger script, Maximus. We ran a background check. You don't exist before 2020. Fake name. Fake history. You're a fraud." Maximus's heart hammered against her ribs. They were right, but not in the way they thought. She did have a fake history. She had buried her past, but not to catch a rich husband. She had done it to escape the suffocating pressure of her own family's legacy, a legacy that made the Sterlings look like paupers. She wanted to be loved for herself, not her last name. "I didn't marry you for money, Liam," Maximus said, her voice quiet but firm. "I signed the prenup. I never asked for a penny." "Because you were playing the long game," Martha spat, "waiting for the child. Once that baby is born, you'd have a claim on the trust fund. Well, we aren't taking that risk. My lawyers advise that since your identity is questionable, the marriage itself might be voidable." "And the baby?" Maximus whispered. Liam looked at her stomach. For a second, a flicker of pain crossed his face, but Jessica squeezed his bicep, and the mask returned. "If it's mine," Liam said coldly, "my lawyers will contact you for a DNA test after the birth. If it's mine, we will take full custody. You won't have the means to raise a sterling heir, Maximus. You're homeless. You want to take my baby?" The shock turned into a cold, hard knot in her chest. "We will raise the child properly," Jessica smiled, placing a hand on her own flat stomach. "I've always wanted a son, and since I'm moving in today, I'll be the mother figure he actually needs. Someone with class, someone with pedigree." Maximus looked at the three of them, the unholy trinity of greed and status. Martha, obsessed with image, Jessica, obsessed with possession, and Liam, a weak, spineless man who let his mother and ex-mistress dictate his morality. She realized then that begging would do no good. The man she loved was dead. He had died the moment he let another woman pack his pregnant wife's bags. Maximus wiped the rain from her eyes. She stood up straighter, wincing as the baby kicked hard against her ribs. "You're right, Martha," Maximus said, her voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the sound of the storm. "I don't fit in this world, because this world is small and cruel and cheap." "Cheap," Martha scoffed. "This estate is worth $20 million. Maximus looked at the mansion, then back at them with a look of profound pity. "Like I said, cheap." She turned to Liam. "You will never see this child. You forfeited your right to be a father the moment you put those bags outside. Remember this moment, Liam, Because when you're begging God for a second chance, remember that you chose the rain. Get off my property, Martha shrieked, her composure cracking at Maximus's insolence. Before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. Maximus didn't look back. She grabbed the handles of 2 suitcases, struggling to drag them down the wet driveway. She had to make 2 trips. No one helped her. She could feel their eyes burning into her back as she loaded her old car. She climbed into the driver's seat, soaked to the bone, shivering uncontrollably. She started the engine, the heater blasting weak, lukewarm air. As she drove through the iron gates of the Sterling estate for the last time, her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A notification from her bank app. Alert. Joint account ending in 4490 has been closed. Balance, $0.000. They had cut her off completely. She had the $5,000 check in the suitcase, a half tank of gas, and a baby coming in 8 weeks. Maximus drove until she reached a Motel 6 on the outskirts of Tacoma. She paid cash for a room that smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon polish. She sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, staring at the rotary phone on the nightstand. She had promised herself she would never make the call. She had run away 4 years ago to prove she could survive on her own, to escape the shadow of her brothers who controlled half the global economy. She wanted a simple life. A simple love. She looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Wet hair, red eyes, swollen face. I tried, she whispered to the empty room. I tried to be normal. She pulled a small, hidden locket from around her neck. Inside wasn't a picture of Liam. It was a micro SD card and a tiny slip of paper with a number written in bold black ink. A number that connected directly to a private satellite line in Zurich. She wasn't ready to call yet. The shame was too great. She needed to survive a little longer on her own. She needed to grieve the death of her marriage. But as she lay back, clutching her belly, a new emotion began to simmer beneath the sadness. It wasn't despair. It was rage. 4 weeks. That was how long it took for Maximus to fall from the wife of a shipping heir to a ghost haunting the back alleys of Seattle. The $5,000 Martha had generously given her was gone faster than Maximus had anticipated. Between the motel deposit, the emergency prenatal vitamins, car repairs when her old sedan's transmission finally died, and the sheer cost of eating for 2, Maximus was down to her last $300. She had applied for jobs. God, she had applied everywhere. Boutiques, libraries, reception desks. But Seattle was a small town when you were on the blacklist of the Sterling family. Martha Sterling sat on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. It seemed that every time Maximus got an interview, a phone call would be made and the position would suddenly be filled. They weren't just content with kicking her out. They wanted to erase her. Now, 8 months pregnant and desperate, Maximus found herself wearing an ill-fitting black uniform, standing in the steamy, chaotic kitchen of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. She had secured a temp job with a staffing agency that didn't ask questions about her background, only if she could carry a tray. "Move it, new girl," the shift manager, a red-faced man named Rick, barked. "We're short-handed on the floor. Get those champagne flutes out there." I can't lift the heavy trays too high," Maximus said, wiping sweat from her forehead. Her ankles were swollen to the size of grapefruits, and her back felt like it was being sawed in half. "I'm 8 months pregnant, Rick." "I don't care if you're carrying the Messiah," Rick snapped. "You want the paycheck? You work the floor. VIP guests are arriving in 10 minutes. Get out there." Maximus swallowed her pride. She needed the $150 this shift promised. She needed it for the hospital deposit. She picked up the tray of crystal flutes, her arms trembling, and pushed through the swinging doors into the grand ballroom. She stopped dead in her tracks. The ballroom was draped in silver and navy blue, the corporate colours of Sterling Shipping. Huge banners hung from the ceiling. The annual Sterling Maritime Gala. Fate wasn't just cruel, it was laughing at her. Maximus turned to flee, to run back into the kitchen and quit, but the doors opened, and the guests began to pour in. It was a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns, the flash of paparazzi cameras blinding her. She was trapped. She kept her head down, weaving through the crowd, offering drinks to faceless suits, praying her swollen belly and lack of makeup would make her invisible. She was just a servant now. Furniture. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in." The voice was like ice water down her spine. Maximus froze. She slowly looked up to see Jessica Thorne standing before her. Jessica looked radiant in a custom red Valentino gown that cost more than Maximus's entire existence. On her finger sat the massive sapphire ring that had once been on Maximus's hand, the Sterling family heirloom. "Jessica," Maximus whispered, clutching the tray so hard her knuckles turned white. "Please, I'm just doing my job." "Your job?" Jessica laughed, loud enough to attract the attention of the nearby circle. "I thought your job was professional gold digger. Did the market crash?" Liam stepped up beside Jessica. He looked dashing, holding a scotch, laughing at something a business associate said. Then he saw Maximus. His smile vanished. For a moment, Maximus saw shame in his eyes. He looked at her uniform, her exhausted face, the undeniable swell of her stomach that held his child. "Maximus?" he murmured. "What are you doing here?" "Surviving," Maximus said, her voice shaking. "Since you cut off my access to everything." "You're embarrassing us," Martha Sterling appeared, flanked by 2 security guards. "How dare you show your face here? Did you come to beg? To make a scene?" "I didn't know it was your gala," Maximus said, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm working. I'll leave. Just let me put the tray down." "Oh, you're not leaving yet." Jessica smiled, a wicked glint in her eye. "Not until we check your pockets." The music in the ballroom seemed to stop. A hush fell over the crowd. "What?" Maximus gasped. "My diamond earrings," Jessica announced, her voice projecting to the onlookers. "I took them off in the powder room earlier to adjust my hair. This woman was in there cleaning. Now they're gone." "That's a lie," Maximus cried out. "I haven't been near the powder room. I just got here." "She's a thief, Liam," Jessica said, grabbing Liam's arm. "You know she's a fraud. She stole your time. She stole your money. And now she's stealing jewelry." "Check her," Martha commanded the security guards. "No, don't touch me." Maximus backed away. But one of the guards, a burly man who clearly knew who signed his paycheck, grabbed her arm roughly. The tray of champagne tipped. Crash. Crystal shattered everywhere. Expensive vintage champagne soaked Maximus's uniform and splashed onto Jessica's red gown. "You clumsy cow!" Jessica shrieked, slapping Maximus across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the silent ballroom. Maximus stumbled back, her heel slipping on the wet floor. She flailed, trying to catch her balance, but the weight of the baby pulled her forward. She fell hard, landing directly on her side, her stomach colliding with the edge of a heavy banquet table. A sharp, tearing pain ripped through her abdomen. It wasn't a contraction. It was something else. Something wrong. "Ah!" Maximus screamed, clutching her belly, curling into a ball on the champagne-soaked floor. "Get her out of here!" Martha yelled, stepping over Maximus as if she were a pile of dirty laundry. "She's ruining the gala!" "Liam!" Maximus reached a hand out, looking up at her husband. Blood was trickling down her leg, mixing with the champagne. "Liam! The baby! Something's wrong! Help me!" Liam took a step forward, his face pale. "Mum, she's bleeding." "She's faking it," Jessica hissed, pulling Liam back. "It's a performance, Liam. Don't fall for it. If you help her now, the press will have a field day. Do you want sterling stocks to tank tomorrow, because you were seen comforting your thief ex-wife?" Liam looked at Maximus, writhing in pain on the floor. Then he looked at the cameras flashing in the distance. He looked at his mother's stern face. Slowly, Liam Sterling turned his back. "Security," Liam said, his voice void of emotion. "Remove this woman from the premises. Call an ambulance if you must, but get her off the property." Maximus watched his back retreat. The pain was blinding now, a white-hot fire consuming her. As the security guards lifted her roughly, dragging her toward the service exit, she didn't scream anymore. The part of her that loved Liam Sterling died on that ballroom floor. The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and lights. The paramedics were shouting codes she didn't understand. "BP is dropping, 80/50. Fetal heart rate is decelerating. We have a placental abruption." She was wheeled into the trauma unit of Seattle Grace Hospital, a public hospital, overcrowded and underfunded. Not the private suite Martha had reserved for her months ago. She was alone. A kind nurse named Sarah held her hand as they prepped her for an emergency C-section. "Honey, do you have family?" Sarah asked gently, wiping blood from Maximus's forehead. "Is there anyone we can call?" "The father?" "No father," Maximus whispered through chattered teeth. "He's dead. Parents? Siblings?" Maximus closed her eyes. The monitor beeped frantically. She felt the darkness closing in. She knew she might not make it. The abruption was severe. She had lost too much blood. "My bag," Maximus gasped, pointing to her plastic belongings bag on the counter. "The locket." Sarah opened the bag and handed her the silver locket. Maximus's fingers, trembling and stained with her own blood, pried it open. She pulled out the tiny micro SD card and the slip of paper. "Phone!" Maximus wheezed. Sarah handed her the hospital room phone. Maximus dialed the number. Her vision was tunneling. 1 ring, 2 rings. Click. "Secure line. Identify." A deep, distorted voice answered. It wasn't a receptionist. It was a voice that sounded like gravel and gun smoke. "Code. Black. Swan," Maximus whispered, the tears finally falling. "This is Maximus. Valerius." There was a silence on the other end, so profound it felt like the world had stopped spinning. The name Valerius hadn't been spoken in 4 years. It was a name that made governments nervous. A name that owned half of Europe's underworld and a third of its legitimate banking. Maximus? The voice modulator was turned off. The voice was human now, deep, rich, and trembling with shock. It was Dante, her oldest brother. "Elle, is that you? We've been looking for you for 4 years. We thought you were dead." "Dante," Maximus sobbed, her strength fading rapidly. "Seattle. General Hospital. They hurt me, Dante. They took everything. I'm dying. Save my baby." "Who?" Dante's voice shifted. It wasn't shock anymore. It was the low growl of a predator who just found prey. "Who hurt you?" "Sterling," Maximus breathed out, the darkness finally taking her. "The Sterling family." The phone slipped from her hand and dangled by the cord. On the other end, in a penthouse overlooking the skyline of Monaco, Dante Valerius stood up slowly. He was 6'4" of pure muscle and tailored Italian wool. He looked at the man sitting across from him, his brother, Roman Valerius, who was currently cleaning a speck of dust off a semi-automatic pistol. "Start the jet," Dante said, his voice so cold it dropped the room temperature. "What is it?" Roman asked, seeing the look on Dante's face, a look he hadn't seen since their father was assassinated. "We found her," Dante said, crushing the phone in his hand until the plastic cracked. "They hurt our little sister, and they left her to die." Roman stopped cleaning the gun. He stood up, his dark eyes turning pitch black. "Sterling. Sterling," Dante confirmed. Roman walked to the window, looking out at the night. "Burn it down. Burn it all down." The next 24 hours in Seattle were grey and rainy, business as usual. But in the invisible corridors of power, the air pressure had changed. At the Sterling estate, Martha and Jessica were having a celebratory brunch. The gala had been a success despite the incident. They had spun the story to the press. Deranged ex-wife crashes gala, drunk and disorderly. The tabloids were eating it up. "It's finally done," Jessica sighed, sipping a mimosa. "She's out of the picture. I heard she's in critical condition at the county hospital. Even if the brat survives, Child Protective Services will take it. She has no home, no income, and a record of instability." Liam sat silently at the end of the table, staring at his coffee. He couldn't get the image of Maximus bleeding on the floor out of his head. "Cheer up, darling," Martha said, buttering a scone. "You did the right thing. You protected the family name." Suddenly, a low rumble began to shake the fine china on the table. It grew louder, a rhythmic, thumping sound. "Is that thunder?" Jessica asked, looking at the window. The rumble became a roar. Liam stood up and walked to the French doors. He looked up. 3 massive black helicopters were descending from the grey clouds. They weren't news choppers. They were military-grade Sikorsky S-766, painted matte black with no markings except for a silver V on the tail. "What the hell?" Liam muttered. The helicopters didn't respect the property lines. They hovered directly over the Sterling estate's manicured lawn, the wind from their rotors tearing up Martha's prize-winning rose bushes and sending patio furniture flying. "My roses!" Martha shrieked, running to the window. "Call the police! This is trespassing!" The lead helicopter touched down right in the center of the driveway, blocking the exit. The other 2 hovered like birds of prey. The side door of the lead chopper slid open. A ramp extended. First came the guards, 4 men in tactical black suits, wearing earpieces and carrying weapons that were definitely not legal for civilians. They fanned out with military precision, securing the perimeter. Then, 2 men stepped out. They moved with a synchronized, predatory grace. They wore suits that cost more than the Sterling's annual operating budget, bespoke Tom Ford, cut to hide the holsters beneath. One had hair as black as a raven's wing and eyes like ice. Dante Valorius. The other had lighter hair, buzzed short, and a scar running through his eyebrow. Roman Valerius. They walked toward the front door of the Sterling mansion, not like guests, but like conquerors coming to claim a debt. "Who are these people?" Jessica's voice trembled. The front door exploded open. Not unlocked, kicked in. The heavy oak doors splintered inward. The maids screamed and ran. Dante and Roman stepped into the foyer, rain dripping from their shoulders. They didn't look wet. The rain seemed to fear touching them. Liam ran into the hallway, trying to muster his authority. "Hey, you can't just barge in here. Do you know who I am? I'm Liam Sterling." Roman Valerius didn't even slow down. He walked straight up to Liam. "Liam Sterling," Roman said, tasting the name like it was poison. "Yes, and I will have you." Roman's fist moved so fast it was a blur. A sickening crack echoed through the house as his knuckles connected with Liam's jaw. Liam crumbled to the floor, unconscious before he hit the marble. "Liam!" Martha screamed, rushing forward. "You animals!" Dante stepped in front of Martha, looming over her. He didn't yell. He spoke in a whisper that was terrifyingly calm. "My name is Dante Valerius. The man on the floor is lucky my brother only used his hand." Martha froze. The color drained from her face. Even in Seattle, the name Valerius was whispered with fear. They were European royalty of the darkest kind. Oil, shipping, weapons, tech. They were the whales that ate the sharks. "Valerius?" Martha stammered. I don't understand. What do you want with us?" "You have something that belongs to us," Dante said, looking around the opulent house with a sneer of disgust. "You broke our sister." "Sister?" Jessica squeaked from the doorway, trembling. "We don't know your sister." Dante turned his gaze to Jessica. She felt like a deer in the sights of a rifle. "Maximus," Dante said. "Maximus Valerius. You know her as Maximus Sterling. The woman you threw out into the rain, the woman you framed, the woman who is currently fighting for her life because of you." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Martha's mouth opened and closed. "Maximus? Maximus is a Valerius? But she said she was an orphan. She was poor. She ran away to find a life where people didn't bow to her." Roman spat, stepping over Liam's unconscious body. "She wanted to be loved for who she was, not for our money. She chose this pathetic excuse for a man." He kicked Liam's leg. "And you treated her like garbage." "We didn't know!" Martha cried, panic setting in as she realized the magnitude of their mistake. They hadn't just kicked out a nobody. They had declared war on a nuclear superpower. "Ignorance is not an immunity," Dante said, checking his watch. "Our lawyers are currently buying your bank. Not your bank account, the bank itself. In about 10 minutes, every credit card you own will decline. Your assets are being frozen as we speak." "You can't do that," Jessica cried. "We just did," Roman smirked. "But that's just the money. That's boring. We're here for the personal touch." Dante pulled out a phone. "The hospital. How is she?" He listened for a moment, his face softening, then hardening again. He hung up. "She's out of surgery. She's alive. The boy is in the NICU." Dante looked at Martha and Jessica. "You have 1 hour to pack a bag. 1 bag each, just like you gave her." "And go where?" Martha whispered. "I don't care," Dante said, turning to leave. "But if I see you in Seattle by sundown, I will let Roman finish what he started." As the brothers walked back toward the shattered door, Dante paused and looked back at the unconscious Liam. "Oh, and tell him when he wakes up," Dante said. "He wanted a DNA test? He'll get one. And once we prove that boy is his, we will sue him for child abandonment, negligence, and emotional distress. He will never see that child. The Valerius bloodline is closed to traitors." The brothers walked out into the rain, leaving the Sterling dynasty in ruins behind them. Seattle General Hospital was no longer a public facility. At least not the 4th floor. Within 2 hours of the phone call, the Valerius organization had effectively rented the entire maternity wing. Private security contractors replaced the hospital rent-a-cops. The nurses who were allowed to stay had signed non-disclosure agreements that carried penalties steeper than the GDP of a small country. Liam Sterling stood in the lobby, holding a bouquet of wilted gas station flowers, the only thing he could find open at 6 a.m. His jaw was purple and swollen where Roman had punched him. "I'm her husband," Liam insisted, to the stone-faced guard blocking the elevator. "I have a right to see her." "You have a right to remain silent," the guard said, not even looking at him. "Mr. Valerius has flagged you as a threat to the patient. If you step past this line, I am authorized to neutralize that threat." "Neutralize?" Liam sputtered. "This is a hospital, not a war zone." "It is now," the guard replied. Upstairs, the atmosphere was hushed. Maximus drifted back to consciousness. The pain in her abdomen was sharp, a reminder of the emergency surgery. but the room didn't smell like the antiseptic cleanser of the ER. It smelled of lilies and expensive cologne. She opened her eyes. Dante was sitting in a chair by the window, reading a document on a tablet. Roman was pacing the floor, looking out at the city as if daring it to attack them. "Dante," she croaked. Both men moved instantly. Roman was at her side in a second, pouring water into a glass with a bendy straw. Dante dropped the tablet and took her hand. His hand was rough, scarred, but his touch was incredibly gentle. "We're here, Elle," Dante said softly. "You're safe." "The baby?" Panic seized her chest. He's fighting," Roman said, his voice thick with emotion. "He's small, premature, but he's a Valerius. He's stubborn." A nurse wheeled in an incubator. Inside, a tiny, fragile infant slept, hooked up to monitors. He was so small, his skin translucent. Maximus wept. "I didn't want this for him. I wanted him to be safe. I wanted him to be normal." "Normal is a myth," Dante said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "You tried normal, Elle, and normal left you bleeding on a ballroom floor." Maximus looked at her brothers, the guilt washing over her. "I ran away because I was scared. I didn't want the life, the bodyguards, the enemies, the darkness. I thought if I became Maximus Sterling, nobody, I could be happy." "We aren't angry you left," Roman said, though his eyes burned with intensity. "We're angry you didn't call us sooner. We would have bought the city for you. Instead, you let these insects treat you like a beggar." "They didn't know," Maximus whispered. "They know now." Dante's voice dropped an octave. "And they're going to wish they had never learned the alphabet." "Liam?" Maximus asked, the name tasting like ash. "Downstairs," Roman sneered, trying to play the concerned father. "Do you want to see him?" Maximus looked at her son in the incubator. She remembered the rain. She remembered the suitcases. She remembered Liam turning his back as she bled. "No," Maximus said, her voice finding a new steeliness. "I don't want him near my son. He made his choice." "Good," Dante nodded. He pulled out a document. "Because we have work to do. The Sterlings are claiming you are an unfit mother. They're saying you're a fraud with a fake identity, and therefore custody should default to the father." Maximus tried to sit up, wincing. "They can't take him." "They are trying," Dante said calmly. "They have hired Marcus Thorne, Jessica's father. He's the district attorney. They are going to try to use the law to crush you, Elle. They think because we are Valerius, we are criminals. They think they can paint us as the mob and themselves as the upstanding citizens." "Can they?" Maximus asked fearfully. Roman cracked his knuckles, a shark-like grin spreading across his face. "Let them try. They're bringing a lawsuit to a gunfight." 3 days later, the war moved from the hospital to the boardroom. The Sterling family was not used to losing. Martha Sterling, recovering from the shock of the helicopter invasion, had rallied her forces. She was sitting in the plush conference room of Thorne and Associates, the most shark-infested law firm in Seattle. Jessica was there, pacing nervously. Liam sat in the corner, looking like a man who was slowly realizing he was the villain in his own story. Marcus Thorne, the district attorney and Jessica's father, threw a file onto the mahogany table. "It's tricky," Marcus grunted. He was a heavy-set man with a face like a bulldog and morals to match. "The Valerius brothers. I've run their names through Interpol. They're clean, disturbingly clean. They run a dozen legitimate conglomerates. Shipping, tech, pharmaceuticals. But we all know the rumors. They are the underworld. Rumors don't hold up in court," Liam muttered. "They do if we spin it right," Jessica snapped. Maximus lied on our marriage license. She used a fake name. That makes the marriage fraudulent. That makes her a liar. We paint her as an unstable con artist who infiltrated a good family. We paint her brothers as foreign gangsters coming to steal an American heir. The American heir angle plays well with the press, Martha mused, tapping her manicured fingernails on the table. We need to file for emergency custody, immediate removal of the child from her care. But the baby is in the NICU, Liam argued weakly. We can't move him. We can move him to a private facility we control, Martha corrected. Once we have the boy, we have the leverage. She won't fight us if we have her son. Draft the papers, Marcus ordered his paralegals. We serve them today. We hit them with a custody order, a restraining order against the brothers, and a lawsuit for the return of family assets, the jewelry she stole. She didn't steal the jewelry, Jessica, Liam said, finally looking up. You planted it. I saw you put them in your purse before we left the house. The room went silent. Jessica walked over to Liam and leaned down, her perfume overpowering. Liam, honey, do you want your son to be raised by gangsters? Do you want to be the laughing stock of Seattle? The man whose wife conned him? Or do you want to be the victim who fought back and saved his child? Pick a side. Liam looked at his mother, then at Jessica. He slumped his shoulders. Just do it. 2 hours later, a process server arrived at the hospital. He was stopped by the private security, but managed to hand the envelope to Roman, who was standing outside smoking a cigarette. Roman opened the envelope. He scanned the legal jargon. Emergency custody hearing. Fraud allegations. Restraining order. He didn't rip it up. He didn't yell. He just smiled. It was a terrifying smile. He pulled out his phone and dialed Dante. They took the bait, Roman said. They filed in King County Court. Judge Halloway is presiding. Perfect, Dante's voice came through the earpiece. Is everyone in position? The board meeting is in 1 hour, Roman confirmed. Good. It's time to introduce the Sterlings to their new bosses. Across town, at the Sterling shipping headquarters, an emergency board meeting was underway. The company's stock had taken a hit due to the rumors of the Gala disaster, but Martha was confident she could smooth it over. We just need to reassure the investors, Martha told the room full of nervous board members. This is a domestic dispute. It has nothing to do with the company's solvency. Are you sure about that, Martha? The doors to the boardroom swung open. Dante Valerius walked in. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo this time. He was wearing a navy pinstripe suit that screamed corporate executioner. Behind him walked a team of 5 lawyers, each carrying a briefcase. "Security!" Martha shrieked. "Get him out!" "Sit down, Martha," the chairman of the board, an old man named Mr. Henderson, said quietly. Martha looked at Henderson, confused. "What?" "Mr. Valerius has the floor," Henderson said, refusing to meet Martha's eyes. Dante walked to the head of the table. He placed a single folder on the surface. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," Dante began, his voice smooth and commanding. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, Valerius Global Holdings has acquired a controlling interest in Sterling Shipping." "Impossible," Liam stood up. "We own 51% of the stock. It's a family company." "Correction," Dante smiled. "You owned 51%, but you leveraged 20% of your shares to cover your bad investments in the Asian markets last year, didn't you, Liam? And Martha, you put up another 15% as collateral for your new estate developments." Martha's face went grey. "The bank called in those loans this morning," Dante continued. "And guess who bought the debt?" "We did." Dante leaned forward, placing his hands on the table. We now own 65% of this company, which means, Martha, you are sitting in my chair." "This is a hostile takeover," Jessica gasped from the corner. "No," Dante looked at her with cold amusement. "This is an eviction, just like the one you served my sister." Dante snapped his fingers. One of his lawyers stepped forward and handed papers to Martha and Liam. "Termination notices," Dante explained. "Effective immediately. You are stripped of your titles, your salaries, and your company cars. Security will escort you out of the building. You have 10 minutes to clear your desks." "You can't do this!" Martha screamed, her composure shattering completely. "I built this company." "And you destroyed it the moment you touched a Valerius," Dante said. "Oh, and regarding the custody hearing you filed?" Dante turned to Marcus Thorne, who was shrinking in his seat. "Mr. District Attorney, I have a recording here." Dante held up a small flash drive. "Surveillance audio from the gala. It captures your daughter, Jessica, admitting to planting the jewelry on Maximus. It also captures her admitting to bribing the police chief to ignore the assault report." Jessica froze. "If you proceed with this custody hearing," Dante said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I will release this to the press, and then I will hand it to the FBI. You will lose your job. Your daughter will go to jail for perjury and filing a false police report, and the Sterlings will be destitute." Dante paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "Or," he continued, "you drop the lawsuit, you sign over full custody to Maximus, and you disappear." The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioner and Martha Sterling's ragged breathing. Liam looked at his mother. The empire was gone. The money was gone. The reputation was gone. "Sign it," Liam whispered, defeated. "But," Jessica started. "Sign it," Liam yelled, slamming his hand on the table. "It's over, Jessica. They won." Dante watched as Liam signed the custody waiver with a shaking hand. He watched Martha sign her resignation. He took the papers, checked the signatures, and nodded to Roman, who was standing by the door. "Get them out of my building," Dante said. As the security guards, the same ones who used to work for Martha, grabbed her by the arms to escort her out, Dante called out one last thing. "Martha?" She turned back, tears streaming down her face, a broken woman. "It's raining outside," Dante said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "I hope you brought an umbrella." 6 months had passed since the hostile takeover. The rain in Seattle was still cold, but for Liam Sterling it felt colder than ever before. He sat on a damp bench in a public park, staring at the grey water of the Puget Sound. His Brooks Brothers suit was long gone, sold to a consignment shop to pay for rent on a studio apartment he shared with his mother. He wore a cheap windbreaker now, the zipper stuck halfway up. The twist he hadn't seen coming wasn't the poverty. It was Jessica. The day after the Valerius brothers stripped the Sterlings of their company and assets, Jessica Thorne had revealed her true colours. There was no baby. There never had been. It was a phantom pregnancy, a strategic lie orchestrated by her and her father to lock down the Sterling marriage before the company hit rough waters. When the money evaporated, so did she. She didn't just leave. She cleared out the safe in the master bedroom, taking the last of the cash Liam had hidden, and moved in with a 60-year-old tech billionaire in Silicon Valley the very next week. "Liam?" He looked up. A black SUV had pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. It was Maximus. She didn't look like the frazzled, desperate woman he had kicked out. She looked regal. She wore a cream-colored cashmere coat and sunglasses that probably cost more than his car. She didn't step out of the vehicle. She simply looked at him through the open window. "Maximus!" Liam stood up, rushing toward the car, a flicker of pathetic hope in his eyes. "You came. I knew you would." I knew you still loved me." "I didn't come for love, Liam," Maximus said, her voice cool and detached. "I came to sign the final divorce decree. My lawyer said you were refusing to sign the papers sent to your new address." She handed a clipboard through the window. Liam took it, his hands shaking. "Elle, please. I made a mistake, a horrible mistake. Jessica, she played me. Mum pushed me. I was weak, but I'm the father of your child. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means you provided biological material," Maximus said. "But a father? No. A father protects his family. You watched me bleed and turned your back because you were afraid of a camera flash." "I have nothing," Liam cried, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "I'm working at a warehouse, Maximus. My mother is bagging groceries. We've lost everything. Isn't that punishment enough? Can't you help us? Just a little? For old times' sake?" Maximus looked at him, really looked at him, and realized she felt absolutely nothing. The anger was gone. The love was gone. There was only indifference. "You have exactly what you gave me, Liam," Maximus said softly. "You have your life. You have your health. And you have the consequences of your choices." She pointed to the clipboard. "Sign it, or Dante comes to visit you personally." Liam flinched at the name. He scribbled his signature on the paper, a defeated man. As he handed it back, he asked one final question. "The boy, Leo, does he look like me?" Maximus pressed the button to roll up the window. As the glass slid up, shutting him out forever, she spoke one last sentence. "No, he looks like a Valerius. He looks like strength." The car drove away, leaving Liam Sterling standing alone in the rain, clutching his empty pockets, finally understanding the true cost of the price he had paid for his pride. The setting sun cast a golden glow over Lake Como, Italy. The Villa Valerius stood proudly on the cliffside, a fortress of stone and beauty that had housed the family for generations. The air was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses. It was Leo's first birthday. Maximus sat on the terrace, watching her son wobble across the grass. He was a happy, healthy baby, with bright eyes and a laugh that was infectious. He wasn't chasing a ball. He was chasing his uncles. Dante Valerius, the terrifying CEO who made grown men tremble, was currently on his hands and knees, letting baby Leo ride on his back like a horse. Roman was sitting nearby, blowing bubbles for the child to pop, a genuine smile replacing his usual scowl. "He's fast," Roman noted, as Leo tumbled into the grass, giggling. "He's going to be a runner." "He's going to be a leader," Dante corrected, picking the boy up and hoisting him high into the air. "Look at that grip. He's already got the world in his hands." Maximus took a sip of her wine, feeling a peace she hadn't known was possible. A year ago, she was destitute, sobbing in a motel room, mourning a marriage she thought was her entire world. She had thought her life was over. She realized now that her life had only been waiting to begin. She had taken her place in the family business, running the charitable foundation arm of Valerius Global. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was Maximus Valerius, and she wore her name like armor. Dante walked over, carrying Leo, and sat beside her. "You okay, Elle?" he asked, his protective gaze scanning her face. "I'm better than okay," Maximus smiled, taking her son into her arms. "I was thinking about the rain in Seattle." "Don't," Roman said, pouring himself a drink. "That city is a graveyard." "No," Maximus shook her head. "I need to remember it. I need to remember how it felt to be powerless, so that I never let anyone make me feel that way again." She kissed Leo's forehead. The baby cooed, reaching for the locket around her neck, the same locket that had saved their lives. They wanted a story, Maximus whispered to the wind, looking out over the water. They wanted the poor orphan girl who got crushed by the rich empire. But they forgot one thing. "What's that?" Dante asked. Maximus looked at her brothers, the two men who had burned the world down for her, and then at her son, the heir to a legacy of unbreakable loyalty. "They forgot that wolves don't die when you kick them out," Maximus said, her eyes flashing with a fierce, triumphant light. "They just go home to the pack." She raised her glass. "To family." Dante and Roman clinked their glasses against hers. "To family." And that is how the Sterling dynasty crumbled. Not with a bang, but with a phone call. It's a brutal reminder that you should be careful who you step on, because you never know who is standing behind them. Liam and Martha thought they were discarding a piece of trash, but they were actually throwing away a diamond to pick up a piece of broken glass. Now I have a question for you guys. If you were Maximus, and Liam came to you in that park, broke and begging for help, would you have given him a second chance, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of karma and sweet revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. We post new dramas every single week. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth always comes out in the end. See you in the next video.